Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now we're going to get into the design properties panel. Now this is where you're going to be doing a lot of work as well. So I've created another square in my frame. I've placed it in the middle and I'm over here on the right. So you'll notice three options: design, prototype, and inspect. We're going to be focusing on design. And we're going to go through all these different options that you may see. And it's going to be different, really depending on the different things that you are going to be doing, like text and a shape will have different properties, and we'll go over that. So let's go through it. So the first thing you have is the alignment. This is going to align this object based off of its parent. So in this case, if I click left, it's going to be to the left. If I click to the middle, this is the middle, the horizontal middle. Right, top, middle, bottom. So you can, if I want this to be centered perfectly, now it's centered to the middle vertical. This is the middle vertical and this is the middle horizontal. If I want it to be left and bottom left, that's all I would have to do. So if I want it to be right, I would click this option, align right, and then align top. So this is really great if you need to align an object to your canvas or your frame. But if you wanted two objects, what you can do is you can align them together. This is really great if you have two objects. So if you don't want to drag over these objects, and say if you have three objects and you just want to select two, you just select one, hold down Shift, select the other, and now they are both centered to each other. And then you would remove them manually to be centered to the actual frame. So those are the ways to align your items. So I'm going to delete these other two squares, bring this one back to the middle. Okay. Next, we have these different values. We have a bunch here. We have your X and Y values. We have your width and your height. So these are your positional. So if I select something like 200, it's going to move 200 to the left. So your X is your horizontal axis and your Y is your vertical. 0 is going to set me to the top. So let's go back. Your Y and your H are your width and your height. And this little chain is going to connect them. So if I affect this property right here, if I say change it to 400, it's going to actually be 400 height as well. But if I unlink this chain and I say set the height to 200, now the width won't change. So let's go all the way back. Okay. And what I'm going to do is just set this all to 500 and I'm going to center it again on my frame. So we have a 500 by 500 pixel square. Next, we have our rotational value. We can change this to say 90, which in a case of a square, it's not going to do anything. But if we do 45, there we go. Or if we do 15. So we can do that manually, but if you want to actually not do that manually, you can do it just by going over here. And you see how my cursor changes as I get close to a corner. If I hold that, I can spin it. If I hold Shift, it'll go in increments. So I think it's 15-degree increments. And you can spin it any which way you want. And this is your corner radius. So if I want 100, it's going to make it rounded. You can even select this little dot here and pull it in. So now I have 250 radius and that looks like a circle. Or I can make it small, like a little card on a UI. That looks really good. Now if we go back and just reset it to 0, we'll go back to our square. Below that, we have constraints. Now constraints are really good for responsiveness in general. And basically, it's how your item reacts to when your frame is being stretched or contracted. So in this case, if we look at our constraints, they're left and top. So that means if I resize my frame from the right and the bottom, it's not going to do anything. So I'm going to Command Z and go back. But if I select from the top left, it's going to move with that top left. So pretty cool, right? Now this is where it gets really interesting. Now if we want to make, like, say, responsive cards and stuff like that, all we need to do is set these properties. So in this case, say left and right and top and bottom. Let's scale this. You'll see that now it's going to scale with the way you scale your actual frame. So this is great for responsiveness if you're working on like different screen sizes and you want to create like maybe card components that you want to be able to reuse at different sizes and the content moves easily within. This is the way to do it. So I'm going to Command Z all the way back to when we had a beautiful square, and there we go. Next, what we have is different blending modes. So this is kind of something you would see in Photoshop. We have like multiply, we have screen, all these different things. Really great for if you're using like multiple colors. And say I want to make this multiply, we can do that also within Figma. So those are your blending modes. Next, we have our fills. This is very self-explanatory. You just need to click this little section here and you can edit the hex value. You can even change it to RGB. You have HSL, CSS, and so on. And you can go and just drag your cursor and change the color. You can change the hues and you can go up and down, get all those different values and get some really nice colors. So there you go. We got kind of like this nice turquoise teal bright color right here. You can toggle that to turn on and off if you're working with different layers, maybe different components. You can also add more color fills on top of one layer. So in this one, this is a linear one. You can change that up here. So in the case earlier, we had a solid color and we can change that opacity to say like 20. So you can see the layer below it. So if I go back and I go up here, I can change it to linear. I can change it to radial, angular, diamond, and you can even have an image. So a lot of different options for you right there. So let's go back. Let's actually remove this layer just by clicking this minus button. So we still have our nice fill over here. You can add strokes. So you can see a light black outline around this shape. We can change that over here. So if I change that to 10, that's the value. There we go. So there's different ways you can have it centered. You can have it inside, outside. That's sometimes up to preference, depends on what you're doing. Like say if I'm using a button, I'll usually have it set to inside so it doesn't affect like different sizing in terms of the pixel width of the actual button itself and the pixel height. You can have different effects here. So if I click that plus button, the default effect is going to be a drop shadow. You'll see that very faint drop shadow right there. So you can edit the values of that drop shadow. So I have it set to like 10Y. So it's going to move it down 10. And if I want to move it 10 to the right, it's going to look like the shadow is being cast to the right. That means the light source is coming from like here. And you can blur it any which way you want. So I blurred it to say 20, and you can set the opacity and the color of that shadow. So in this case, let's make it like a dark blue. And we can see that right there. That's one effect. Other effects that you can do are inner shadow. You can do layer blur, and you can do background blur. So let's stick to our regular drop shadow. The last part of here is the export. So you can export any which way you want. You can do multiple exports. We can set the sizing, kind of like the prefix. You can set which file type you want. Really easily be able to export those to whichever desktop you have, file folder, and easily access all those files. Next, we have text. So I'm going to delete this nice square that we made. So I'm just going to click delete or backspace, and I'm going to select T for the text tool, and I'm just going to click. I'm going to write hello and a Command A, which will select all of them. And you'll notice that they still have the similar properties. Like we don't have the corner radius here. Yeah, that's basically kind of what we don't have, but now we have a text and we can change the copy to be whatever font or typeface that you want. In this case, we can do like Helvetica or something like that. We have our different font options, our weights, and we can adjust the size. We have leading, we have all those different options. We have kerning in there too. So this will affect your line height. You can set it manually. You can set your kerning and your letter spacing to whatever percentage you want. And you can still use those different options. Like if you have text over image, you can select like a drop shadow effect to fix that if you have any legibility or readability issues. And that's all you really need to know for designing within Figma, at least using the design panel over here.